The kitchens of Blackthorn Hall were always warm, even when the rest of the stone fortress felt cold. Elira Voss liked it that way. She liked the steam that rose from the pots, the smell of fresh bread, and the quiet corner near the back door, where she could work without anyone noticing her. Being unnoticed was safe. Elira had learned that lesson a long time ago. She was an Omega, the lowest rank in the pack, and everyone made sure she remembered it. The higher-ranked wolves walked past her without a glance. The guards never held the door for her. Even the other kitchen workers spoke to her only when they needed something carried or cleaned. Elira had grown used to being invisible. She told herself it did not hurt anymore. Though some nights, alone in her small room above the stables, she still felt the old ache of not belonging anywhere. She did not remember her parents. She had grown up in the pack's orphan house, moved from family to family until she was old enough to work. No one ever explained why she had been left there, and after so many years, she had stopped asking. All she carried from her past was a small crescent-shaped birthmark on her left shoulder, hidden beneath her clothes, and a faint, quiet feeling that she was somehow different from the wolves around her. She never told anyone about the feeling. Who would believe an Omega had anything special about her? Chaol Draven, the Alpha King of Blackthorn, ruled the pack with a firm hand and a guarded heart. He had lost his mate many years ago, when she was still an infant, taken during a raid by a rival pack. He had grieved for a short time, and then locked the grief away, telling himself that love was a weakness kings could not afford. Since then, he had ruled alone, trusting only a small circle of advisors, the closest of whom was a woman named Marissa Thorne. Marissa had served the royal family for years, and Chaol relied on her judgment more than anyone else's. What he did not know was that Marissa had built her position on a lie. Long ago, she had switched the king's infant daughter with another child who did not survive, and hidden the real princess among the pack's orphans, far from anyone who might recognize her. Marissa's own daughter, Verena, was next in line for the throne if the true heir was never found. For years, the plan had worked perfectly. One quiet afternoon, an old traveling healer named Bram arrived at Blackthorn Hall to treat a sickness spreading through the eastern village. While resting in the kitchens, he noticed Elira reaching for a pot on a high shelf. Her sleeve slipped, revealing the small crescent mark on her shoulder. Bram went still. His eyes widened, and for a moment, he looked as though he had seen a ghost. "Where did you get that mark?" he asked quietly. Elira pulled her sleeve back down, embarrassed. "I was born with it. Why? Is something wrong?" Bram shook his head quickly, forcing a smile. No, it is nothing. Just an old man's imagination." But his hands trembled as he turned back to his work, and he did not look at her again for the rest of the day. That night, Bram could not sleep. He had seen that mark only once before, on the newborn daughter of the former queen, the day before the pack had been told she was dead. He tried to convince himself it was a coincidence. Many wolves had unusual birthmarks, but the shape was too exact, too familiar. He decided he would speak with the king before he left Blackthorn, even if it meant risking trouble. Meanwhile, Chaol had begun to notice something troubling in the pack's records. Numbers did not match. Old ledgers about the year of the raid, the year his daughter had supposedly died, seemed to have missing pages. When he asked Marissa about it, she brushed off his questions, blaming old age and poor record-keeping. But Chaol was not a king who ignored small details. He ordered the palace archives sealed and demanded that no one touch them until he could review them personally. The next morning, Chaol walked through the kitchens on his way to the training yard, something he rarely did. He preferred the front halls, where wolves bowed and stepped aside. But that day, for reasons he could not explain, his feet carried him past the ovens and the long wooden tables. He nearly collided with a young Omega carrying a tray of bread. She stumbled back, startled, and quickly bowed her head. "Forgive me, my king," she said softly. Chaol was about to walk on, as he always did, but something stopped him. A faint scent reached him, one he had not smelled in over 20 years. It was warm and familiar, like a memory buried so deep he had forgotten it existed. His chest tightened. He stared at the woman in front of him, who kept her eyes lowered, clearly nervous under his gaze. "What is your name?" he asked, his voice rougher than he intended. "Elira, my king." He said nothing more. He simply walked away, but his mind would not let go of that scent. It followed him through the training yard, through his meetings, through the long hours of the afternoon. That night, he summoned Bram, remembering the healer had asked to speak with him earlier that day. Bram entered the king's study with his hat in his hands, clearly uneasy. "My king, I do not wish to bring false hope or cause trouble, but I must tell you what I saw today." Kale listened as the old healer described the crescent mark on the young kitchen worker's shoulder, the same mark he had seen on the infant princess before she disappeared. Kale's jaw tightened. He thought of the scent in the kitchens, the way his instincts had reacted without his permission. "Bring her to me," he said, "tonight." When Alira was summoned to the king's study, her heart pounded with fear. Omegas were rarely called before the king, and never for good reasons. She stood at the door, trembling slightly, unsure what she had done wrong. Kale studied her carefully as she entered. Up close, the pull toward her was even stronger, an ache in his chest that he had not felt since he was a young wolf newly mated. He fought to keep his voice steady. "Show me your left shoulder," he said. Alira blinked, confused and embarrassed. "My king, please," he said, softer this time. "It is important." Slowly, she pulled her sleeve down just enough to reveal the small crescent mark. Kale's breath caught. It was exactly as Bram had described. It was exactly as he remembered from a memory he had tried for years to forget. The small mark on his newborn daughter's shoulder, the day she was born. He turned to the guards at the door. "Bring me the sealed archives now." That night, the truth began to unravel. The archives revealed inconsistencies no one had noticed before, records altered in the same handwriting, dates that did not align with the official story of the princess's death. Kale ordered Marissa brought before him, and though she tried to explain away each discrepancy, her voice shook more with every question. Finally, unable to maintain the lie any longer, Marissa broke down and confessed. She had switched the infants to protect her own daughter's place in the line of succession, believing the real heir would never be found among the pack's forgotten Omegas. She had never expected the two paths to cross again. Kale's fury was quiet, but absolute. He stripped Marissa of her title and ordered her removed from the palace grounds, though he chose exile over harsher punishment, unwilling to spill blood over a decision made so long ago. Verena, Marissa's daughter, was allowed to remain in the pack, but lost any claim to the throne she had never truly deserved. Alira, meanwhile, could hardly process what she had just learned. She sat alone in a guest chamber, far grander than anything she had ever slept in, staring at her own hands, as though they belonged to someone else. She was not an orphan. She was not simply an unwanted Omega. She was the daughter of the former queen, the lost princess everyone believed had died as an infant. It was too much to hold at once. Anger rose in her, sharp and unexpected. For years, she had been mocked, ignored, and looked past by the very pack that should have protected her. And the king, the man now claiming her as his daughter's line, had walked past her in the kitchens more times than she could count, without ever truly seeing her. When Kale came to see her the next morning, she did not rise to greet him as pack custom required. She simply looked at him, her eyes tired and guarded. "You do not owe me your trust," Kale said quietly, standing near the door rather than approaching. "I know that. For years, I told myself my daughter was dead, and I stopped looking. I let others make decisions I should have questioned myself. I do not expect forgiveness. I only ask for patience, if you can offer it." Alira studied him for a long moment. She had spent years imagining what it might feel like to matter to someone, to belong somewhere. Now that the moment had arrived, it felt strange and uncertain, wrapped in grief for the childhood she never had. "I do not know how to be a princess," she admitted quietly. "I do not know how to be anyone's daughter." "Then we will learn together," Kale said. "I do not know how to be a father either. I have not had the chance to try." Over the following weeks, something slowly shifted between them. Kale made time to walk with her through the palace gardens, teaching her about the pack's history, the responsibilities of her bloodline, and the mother she had never known. He was patient in a way the rest of the pack had never seen from their king. And slowly, the guarded wolves around Alira began to soften as well, ashamed of how easily they had once dismissed her. The mating pull between them, the invisible thread the old stories spoke of, between a king and his rightful heir's protector bond, deepened with each passing day, though neither rushed to name it. It was not romantic in nature, but something steadier and quieter, the bond of a father slowly finding his way back to the daughter he had lost. Elira began to stand taller in the halls where she once shrank into corners. She still remembered the sting of being ignored, but she no longer let it define her. She started attending council meetings beside Kale, listening carefully, learning the weight of leadership one lesson at a time. The wolves who once mocked her now bowed their heads when she passed, though she made a quiet effort never to treat anyone the way she had once been treated. On the night of the autumn gathering, Kale stood before the entire pack and formally announced Elira as his daughter and rightful heir to the Blackthorn throne. The hall fell silent as she walked forward, dressed simply, without the jewels or finery some had expected. She wanted the pack to remember her as she truly was, an Omega who had once been overlooked, now standing as proof that worth was never about rank. For years, I judged wolves by strength and bloodline, Kale told the gathered pack, his voice carrying across the silent hall. I forgot that true strength often hides in the quiet corners we never bother to look. Elira looked out over the crowd, the same faces that had once ignored her, now watching with a mixture of shame and respect. She did not feel anger anymore. She felt, for the first time in her life, that she belonged. As the ceremony ended and the pack began to celebrate, Kale placed a hand gently on her shoulder, the same shoulder that carried the mark which had finally revealed the truth. "Welcome home," he said quietly. Elira smiled, and for the first time in years, the ache of not belonging was gone completely. The Blackthorn pack entered a new season, under a king who had learned, at last, that a crown means little without eyes willing to truly see the people it is meant to protect. And Elira, once the Omega everyone ignored, became the queen the pack would remember for generations, not for the bloodline she carried, but for the quiet strength she had carried all along.